Mr. President, we need to rethink financial aid in this country, and we need urgent action if we are to reform our system, to return to the roots, the ideals that made college affordable for generations past and hopefully for this generation and generations to come. Back in the 1970s and 80s, when several members of today's United States Senate were college students, the Pell Grant, which is the cornerstone of our federal student aid programs, covered as much as 72% of the cost of attendance at a four-year public college, 72%. For the 2014-15 academic year, the maximum grant is expected to cover less than one-third of the cost. Investing in things like Pell Grants is critical to ensuring the doors to higher education remain open to all students with the talent and desire to pursue a college degree. Young people today deserve the same fair shake that members of this body got when we were undergraduate students, when there was an 80% roughly grant available, not lending and borrowing up to 80% of your tuition. Now, I was fortunate enough at 17 to join the Army and attend West Point, so I didn't have to face the rigors of financing college education, but everyone I know in my generation will tell you it was easier then because there was a strong federal commitment to supporting men and women of talent and desire to go on to college. Ever-rising costs today are just pricing out a whole generation from college education. And we see more and more hard-working young people and their families falling behind as they try to pay for the degrees that were supposed to help them get ahead. In fact, an analysis of student loan debt by Demos predicts that today over $1 trillion in outstanding student loan debt will lead to a total lifetime wealth loss of $4 trillion for indebted households. Not only do people sort of start off after college with great debt, but their earning potential, their ability to move forward limits their ability to earn. And so it's a much deeper hole than even the initial debt. Student loan debt is jeopardizing the next generation's ability to buy a home, to start a business, to start a family, to do things that my generation sort of took for granted after getting out of college. For the last 30 years, tuition increases have outpaced inflation. Outstanding student loan debt has quadrupled since 2003. It is time for action. Time now. First, we must provide relief for borrowers who are currently repaying their loans. We must ensure that student loan services are held accountable for providing borrowers with accurate and clear information and the full range of borrower benefits that they are due. That is why I was pleased to join Senator Durbin in introducing the Student Loan Borrower Bill of Rights. Even more important to families' bottom line is reducing their payments and overall debt burden. We should allow borrowers with high fixed-rate loans to refinance to the lowest rates approved on a bipartisan basis under the Bipartisan Student Loan Certainty Act that became law last year. That is the premise of Senator Warren's Bank on Students Emergency Student Loan Refinancing Act that I'm also very proud to co-sponsor. I hope that my colleagues will let us vote on this proposal so that we can provide relief to millions of Americans struggling under the weight of student debt. Now, we also have to demand more responsibility from colleges and universities. While student loan debt skyrockets, we're also seeing college executive salaries climb even higher. Clearly, institutions need to have more skin in the game when it comes to student loans. And that is why I introduced, along with many colleagues, the Protect Student Borrowers Act, specifically with Senators Durbin and Senator Warren. The Protect Student Borrowers Act will hold colleges and universities accountable for student loan defaults by requiring them to repay a percentage of defaulted loans. As the percentage of students who default rises, the institution's risk share payment will rise. Essentially, they will now have a real interest in ensuring that their students take out appropriate loans, that they have coursework that leads to remunerative employment after they graduate. All these things colleges can play a key role in. And frankly, today, it's a spotty record. Some are very good, some are indifferent, some are very bad. The Protect Student Borrowers Act also provides incentives for institutions to take proactive steps to ease student loan debts and reduce default rates. Institutions can reduce or eliminate the repayments if they implement a comprehensive student loan management plan. Again, if they talk to their students, if they advise them what to do, if they help them manage this debt. The risk-sharing payments will be invested in helping struggling borrowers, preventing future default delinquency, and reducing shortfalls in the Pell Grant program. So this money will stay in the system to help other students. But the stakes so high for students and taxpayers, it's only fair that institutions bear some of the risk in the student loan program. And I would argue a basic premise that they will do a lot better as custodians and managers and advisors to students when they have money at risk. Right now, it's the student and their families that bears it all, and the government, if default. And as a result, you don't have the active participation at the institutional level that could make a real difference. In many respects, this is a lesson that we learned at a very expensive cost during the financial crisis in the mortgage markets, where mortgage makers had no interest in who was borrowing their money. They couldn't care if they could pay it back, because the minute the papers were signed, they sold it off to the secondary market, they walked away to the next closing. We can't have that attitude pervasive at higher education. We know that there are many forces that are driving increases in costs at higher education. One of the costs is, frankly, the fall off on state contributions to public education. It's reached its lowest point in 25 years, in 2011. I've introduced a Partnership for Affordability and Student Success Act to reinvigorate the federal-state partnership for higher education, with an emphasis on need-based grant aid. Remember, back in the 60s and 70s, 80% of the financing was a grant. You didn't have to pay it back. You had a chance to get an education and start off without a lot of debt. Simply put, I believe the states have to begin and renew their reinvestment in education at the college level for public colleges. So I urge the Senate to come together with a sense of real urgency on finding solutions to all these issues and to move forward and give this generation and the next generation the same opportunity that many of us here took for granted in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. And with that, Mr. President, I would yield back my time on the floor.